A very good morning to everyone. My name is Chris Casingena and with me is Ant Clay today, and we'd like to welcome you to our 10 Steps to User Adoption webinar. As you can see, it's quite a busy webinar at the moment, and there's even some names I recognise in the webinar at the moment, so I'd like to extend my gratitude for all of you joining us today. We will also be recording this webinar, so hopefully you'll be able to find that on the Combined Knowledge YouTube channel once we've finished compressing and editing that video. What we'd like to do is just mention to you that all questions we'd love to answer at the end of the session. So you can use the chat window in our WebEx session to ask questions as we go through the webinar. And then what we'll do is we'll pick as many questions as we can answer from that list. But what we'll do is if you're in a situation where we can't sort of answer every single question, we'll just sort of review as much as we can. And if we have the time, we'll get back to you at the very end. This webinar is scheduled for an hour, and like I said, we'll reserve any questions just till the end so that we can cover all of the content. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pass across to Ant now, who's going to introduce himself, and then I'll formally introduce myself after Ant.
Hi guys, so my name's Ant Clay. I am the founder and CEO of Soul Sailor Consulting. We're a small micro consultancy really focused on enabling organisational value by positively disrupting technology projects. And I guess what that means is what we try and do is work with our customers to change the way that they're working and be more effective and really try and deliver as much value from the great SharePoint platform as we can. Cool. Before we start, I guess I'll just quickly thank CK for inviting me to do this webinar, and obviously they've got some great tools and we'll be looking at some of those later in the context of user adoption. I've written a book about SharePoint governance, and that does include some content around SharePoint Centre of Excellence and change management and user adoption, because I think they're all part of the whole sort of governance package. So if you're interested, then follow that link and buy my book. That'll, well, at least put some food on the table for me over the weekend. So that's the last of any plugging you'll get from me, and hopefully the rest of the content will be informative and useful to you.
Excellent, thank you very much, Anne. Right, I'll introduce myself. I recognise a few people who have been on my courses, and I very much welcome you to the session. Some of you might have seen me at the SharePoint conferences hosted in London by Combined Knowledge. My name is Chris Casingena. I'm a SharePoint trainer from Combined Knowledge, and I've got about 5 years experience working with SharePoint, both with Combined Knowledge and in previous roles that I've worked in. You can find more information about myself at combined-knowledge.com, or if you want to contact me by email, it's chris.casingena, I do apologise for the foreign surname, but it's rather difficult to spell, at combined-knowledge.com. So you can always drop me an email if you have any additional questions after the webinar. I'm more than happy to happily answer those for you. So, what are the 10 steps to user adoption? So this is a very interesting webinar because, as I was discussing with Ant before we even started, Ant was saying that this is actually a topic that's not very heavily covered, and it's nice to actually present to you something that's very informative, very real, that comes from experience of two people who've worked very heavily in this field. So we've addressed 10 areas that we think are really good talking points for addressing this content. So first of all, the 10 steps are: what is the problem? What is a Centre of Excellence? What does a Centre of Excellence do? Who is involved and how do we work with the business? SharePoint tummelers, why does this approach work? Challenges, sustaining the change, and now it's your turn and what to do next. Now, those might seem a little bit abstract at the moment, but of course we're going to explain each steps in a little bit more detail. So what I'd like to do is we'll go on to the next slide, and I'm going to hand over to Ant now, and the structure for this is that Ant's going to be introducing the various steps for the adoption, and then I'm going to follow up with my experiences from these areas throughout my career, and there'll also be some additional topics and demonstrations that we'll discuss as well. So I'm going to hand over to Ant, and Ant's going to be discussing what is the problem.
So I guess the problem is that although SharePoint is a fantastic platform, and although I guess for a lot of us we do feel that our SharePoint projects are successful, and when I say successful, the project manager is happy, we've delivered some software and the business are hopefully using it. What I do find is that if you fast track 3, 6, 12 months into the future, a lot of clients that I see will report back that they're not getting the value that they were expecting. So although the solution's been successfully implemented, it's not quite what they anticipated. And I think what this fundamentally boils down to is that we have a sustainable SharePoint adoption problem. So we're delivering value, we're delivering business functionality, but we're not sustaining that and we're not getting the users engaged for a longer period of time. And some of the reasons for this that I've come across are quite often SharePoint projects are driven from IT. It's the IT department that want SharePoint and that try and drive some of the business functionality out. In other cases, and some people think this is better, but in other cases it's maybe the comms department or marketing who want a website or an intranet and are driving it. Now I think that SharePoint projects that are driven from IT or comms or another specific department create biases. IT want the best tools or the best technology or the easiest life. Comms want it to look brilliant, want it to be very focused around delivering news and information. So whether we like it or not, if we drive our projects from a specific department, even if it's a strategic platform that we're implementing, we end up introducing biases. The other thing is that SharePoint as a platform has evolved so much over the years that it's become very, very complex. In other sessions I talk about a thing called the Cynefin framework, which is a framework designed by a guy called Dave Snowden, and I certainly encourage you to look that up. The Cynefin framework, basically, if we apply it to the SharePoint world, basically says that SharePoint and the business problems that we're trying to solve around it can't be solved in one hit. We can't just do a project and expect those problems to be solved, and that actually our requirements and the value emerges over time as we use the platform. We start understanding more about our problems, and therefore we understand more about the solutions to solve those problems. So it's a long game, and that's what I think is a key issue with SharePoint. We try and get a lot of quick wins out of it. The other thing is we often accept the status quo. Yeah, we've been delivering technology projects for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and they've been successful. Project managers have said, yes, this is live. Yeah. The business has said, yes, we've acceptance tested it, it's fine.
That's right.
Things get accepted, but the reality is this status quo I don't think works for a platform like SharePoint, which has a huge amount of complexity and a huge array of different user stories and use cases of functionality that it can deliver. And finally, from my perspective, I think we need to realise that SharePoint projects are people projects. I'm guaranteeing every single project that you guys do fundamentally affects the way a business person, a user, works. So if you're in a 20 user organisation, you're changing the way 20 people work. If you're in a global organisation with 70,000 people and you put SharePoint in for sharing documents and managing your documents, you're changing the way 70,000 people work.
Exactly.
If we get that wrong, the business isn't going to be happy, and let's face it, we're not going to be happy making lives a misery for 70,000 people in our organisation. So we need to look at things more from the business, more from the end user, so that we can achieve our sort of long-term investments and we can attain our vision and reach our goals. Chris, what do you've worked with a lot of companies from a training perspective and in your past lives, what are you finding?
And 100% correct there. SharePoint is a big culture change, and like you said, you could be changing the way everyone works in the business. Now, I've been around for quite a lot of SharePoint rollouts, and my experience is as follows. I've worked with a company where the rollout has been incredibly passive. The problem with a passive rollout is that maybe people are unaware that the system is even there, and it can quite literally be adopted as, oh look, the intranet has changed colour, it's now green. It can be literally as simple as that. So just to expand upon that point, basically, sometimes it can be unclear what the SharePoint system is even to be used for, what system it's replaced. I hear a lot of feedback saying SharePoint, isn't that web file share thing? And it can sometimes be poorly adopted into the business because people are simply unaware of it pre-implementation. After implemented, after SharePoint goes live, as Ant said, quite often the system's very it's got a lot of features and it can be very underutilized. SharePoint, as you start to explain to people what it can do, they can quickly get excited, but if it's underutilized, again, it gets a bad vibe within the business. So SharePoint can also be adopted for the wrong reasons as well. It could actually be, rather it being a collaborative platform, it could be an anti-collaborative platform. People could use it as a dumping ground for privatized documents that they're not really collaborating with. Maybe it's just that someone wants to upload many different photos to a document library that only they want to use. So there can be situations where SharePoint is used for the wrong reasons as well.
Absolutely. And I guess the answer to this kind of problem, or this set of problems that I think we're finding, is relatively simple in terms of our approach. The first thing is knowing that we have an adoption problem, knowing that people aren't actually getting to SharePoint and using it and taking full advantage of all the features. Knowing we have that problem is a great start. At least we can do something about it. As Chris mentioned right at the start, I think in a lot of organisations we really don't understand the role of change management within a big platform such as SharePoint. And change management, I think, is an area that we as SharePoint consultants and SharePoint and business stakeholders really need to start using and adopting and embracing, so that we can make sure that for the significant investments we're making in the SharePoint platform and in the business using the SharePoint platform, that we actually get that value. It's a thing that I came across a few years ago called adaptive capacity, which is, I'll talk about potentially in a bit more detail later if we have time, but adaptive capacity at a high level is working with the business so that they accept change and actually they expect change to happen, so that we can continually evolve our platform. And I think that's a key element of what this what the answer is to our adoption problem. Chris, any further points on that?
We're currently... Are we on?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So basically, just to expand on Ant's point there, so to aid with the answer for this solution, there are many phases of training, and what I'm going to discuss in a little bit more detail in future points is how we can deliver training through the classroom, through online using features like WebEx, which are currently connected to. We can also do things like floor walking, customized training for exactly what the business is required, or even deliveries like Train the Trainer, where we can actually train people within your business to provide training internally to the rest of your teams.
So one of the key elements of I guess this presentation, but also what I think is really at the heart of sustaining user adoption, is a thing called the Centre of Excellence. And many of you may well have heard it. Some organisations I know are certainly implementing things that they're calling Centre of Excellences, and they may be in line with what we're going to be talking about today, or they may be just a name for a team. But a Centre of Excellence, what is it? What does it actually consist of? Well, in my mind, a Centre of Excellence is a business-facing team. So it isn't a business team, it is absolutely still a SharePoint team, but it's very much focused on delivering value to the business. So it's very much, I guess, outward facing towards the business. It's certainly multi-skilled, and we'll talk in a bit about what sort of skills you need within a Centre of Excellence, but it certainly spans everything from kind of business skills through to very deep technology skills. And it's really the team that I think you need to deliver sustainable value and user adoption from your SharePoint investments. It's around supporting the users and making sure that they can really take most value and make the best use of the tools and the technology that you're putting out there. And I guess, the reality is this SharePoint Centre of Excellence will kind of own and lead your investments in training and training delivery, which is really where Chris and the combined knowledge come in and can really add a huge amount of value.
Yeah, I think one thing that Ant mentioned earlier is that the Centre of Excellence and SharePoint shouldn't really be driven by IT departments. And one of my experiences working previously to Combined Knowledge was working as a IT support technician as well as a server technician as well. And one of the problems I find is that when SharePoint becomes driven by IT, it can often become an anchor on IT services. So there'll be calls into your service teams to just upload files or update home pages, and this is probably why we need something like a Centre of Excellence. The other thing is that users become unwilling to adopt SharePoint as it's seen as an IT system. So they think, why should I? This is IT system, they should maintain it. So again, a Centre of Excellence can get around a situation like that. Also, IT can't envisage the way that every single department is going to use SharePoint. So they adopt this generic standpoint, they create these generic templates which they think is the way that all of these departments work in the business, and in truthfully it's not. And then SharePoint becomes a collection of unfocused business sites, which again doesn't really drive adoption.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key. Although a lot of people kind of try and drive quick wins by putting SharePoint in really out of the box, as I said, SharePoint is complex, business is complex, end users, we as people and we as users are also very complex, and in a lot of cases you'll be very lucky if you really truly deliver value from SharePoint just out of the box. Most organisations, most users, most teams require some customization, some tweaks, custom views, whatever it happens to be to really drive the value.
So to talk about training, so Ant just picked up there, but training is a very important area to this role. And basically, interest and skilled users and ongoing support is the key to adoption. So interest could be sort of informing and educating SharePoint champions, or help spread the word about the benefits of SharePoint for the end users, so that when people come to promote SharePoint within the business, that kind of word of mouth comes from a recognizable face. And user skills, these skills come from training and exposure to the system. So what Combined Knowledge does is it focuses on providing structured or customized training for any particular business. Another key area for support, of course, is you might have a situation where a just-in-time support tool can reduce the influx of IT support requests for new SharePoint rollouts and ongoing usage. If you're in a situation where you work in IT, you might actually get quite a lot of calls asking very simple questions, and that can lower your IT productivity. What we've done at Combined Knowledge, we've identified an area where end-user adoption is key. To help users adopt SharePoint, we created a productivity tool called Support Plus. And this is designed to support users who have either been on our training or are completely new to SharePoint and want to have detailed step-by-steps and videos for hundreds of SharePoint topics to help support them with their role. To quickly demonstrate that, I'm just going to show you the Support Plus tool. So Support Plus is a productivity tool which covers quite a selection of SharePoint topics. In this case, we're looking at the SharePoint 2013 content. So as you can see, we've broken down all of the major topics. If I go to an option like Upload a File, you can see that what we do is we cover comprehensively all of the steps required for an end user to upload a file. So someone calls your IT team, they say, how do I upload a file? You could hit this email button at the top and email them a link to this support product and say to them, hey, you can actually just do this yourself, follow these steps. Now some users don't really get on with just quick steps and they require details. So what we did is we've provided tips to give them alternative ways of acquiring this particular task, details to provide more graphical information about how to achieve these various tasks, and also videos to guide them through those steps in further details as well. So the videos will then help support this by showing a real world example. Topics are also introduced using various other supporting tools like reading spaces. So if a user wanted to quickly learn a little bit more about business intelligence, they could go into a reading space and understand more about that topic. Combined Knowledge's Support Plus tool is available from the App Store, and it can also be deployed on premises for various different businesses. It doesn't just cover SharePoint 2013, we cover other SharePoint platforms such as 2010, 2007 and other Microsoft platforms as well, such as Lync, Office 2010, 2013, and we also are comprehensively designing a CBT system. So we'll include in computer-based training eventually for our product for 2013, which will allow users to undergo training from their computer in a digital format, which includes comprehensive questions to track how far they've studied the content. So I thought it'd be a nice sort of segue there to introduce our support tool. But what I'd like to do is talk about that tool in a slightly more detail later about how it can be customized for your Centre of Excellence.
Great, thanks for that, Chris. So as you can see, that's quite a cool set of resources that should absolutely be driven by your SharePoint Centre of Excellence. And can obviously be customised, which Chris will mention and hopefully highlight later, to your own business solution. Because as we said, fundamentally we don't want to be delivering out-of-the-box SharePoint, but the reality is things like adding documents, creating notes, the stuff that this content can help your users understand, all of those fundamentals are in most cases going to be present whatever your customised solution. So what does a SharePoint Centre of Excellence do? It's quite a grand name. It makes it sound like really, really cool, hopefully. But what is its role in your SharePoint world and in your business? Well, I think there's three key areas that I think the Centre of Excellence needs to focus on. The first is complexity. SharePoint is very complex. Your business is very complex. So we need a team that understands the business and understands the technology to be able to really see through that complexity and deliver the appropriate solutions for what your organisation is trying to achieve and what your business users are trying to achieve. The second is users. Obviously we need to be really, really user-centric with what we're doing with SharePoint. And I think again, a business-focused Centre of Excellence that understands the technology has the right skills to have, in effect, grown-up business conversations with your end users, talking about their problems, talking about their challenges and what they're trying to achieve, and then help the Centre of Excellence to deliver the features and the functionality that will support them in achieving that. And lastly, value. We invest huge amounts of money, even if it's Office 365 and SharePoint Online, we're still investing money and time in our technology platform. So we want to make sure that we get value out of that. And the SharePoint Centre of Excellence should have the knowledge and the experience to really help drive the value of the platform and help the SharePoint Centre of Excellence achieve its goals and, more importantly, the business get to where they're trying to get to. And agility as well is a key element of that. Being agile, being able to respond to business requests, changes in how the business is working may well mean that your SharePoint solution needs to change in line with that. So it all helps keep things in line and keep things moving on. What about from your perspective, how do you see the Centre of Excellence kind of playing a part in delivering value, Chris?
So Ant quite clearly mentioned there that there's a lot of elements of business focus, and when it comes to business focus, sometimes when you're provided with training and tools to help your Centre of Excellence, sometimes they can be generic. As you saw with our Support Plus tool, it's a generic SharePoint 2013 environment that it was created in. Of course, you have your own business processes, may even have your own branding, and now the Support Plus tool can be customized for your business. You can change any of the images so that you can incorporate your own branding into the product, and you can even incorporate your own business processes into it as well. We've gone ahead and included Yammer in our 2013 content, but maybe you use another business tool like SAP, for example. if you purchase not only the Support Plus tool, but also the editing tool for it, you can not only edit our content, but you can also customize the content for your business and add additional productivity tools by designing them yourselves. Now, remember that creating your own knowledge base is very time consuming, which is why Combined Knowledge has gone through all of the effort of designing it for you. And then if you want those customizations, you can simply tweak our content or get involved yourself and start designing your own content using our productivity tools. And of course, Combined Knowledge also works with a lot of large businesses who have heavily customized their SharePoint environment. So to make it relevant to your business, we can also make custom training as well to fit around your timings and implement customizations that you've made, so your end users get the investment out of their SharePoint environment by learning about the additional features that you've added to the product, which might not be out of the box.
Is there any, are we going to see some of the branded stuff? Are we seeing that later?
I can certainly, in fact, let's bring that up very briefly.
Because I think, while Chris is bringing that up, I think, absolutely what he's saying is critical. At every organisation I've worked in, the business processes are always different. And more I'm seeing quite complex business processes appearing around information governance and managing information. So being able to, in effect, customise your help and your support is, I think, invaluable as SharePoint platforms mature and SharePoint becomes more and more complex.
Thanks very much for that, Ant. So as you can see, this is a landing page for all of the products that are available in the Support Plus tool. And what we've done is we've created a couple of customized publications for you. So the customization at the bottom is just our content that's being customized for a specific company. So this is more of a visual customization. What we've done is, if I try and open that in a new tab, there we go. This is Hudon, and what we've done is we've customized some content directly for their environment. So it's got their branding, it's got their look and feel, it's got the yellow and sort of silver look. And what we've done is, this is actually a system that they're using, and their content has gone into this system. So it's not just focused on SharePoint. They've got their own, sorry about that, they've got their own business systems adopted into our solutions. They've got a central help system for all of their business areas. I'll just close that down. We've also got, as Ant said, a lot of businesses have their own defined processes, very common. So why not design a help system that goes through your business processes? So there may be specific roles or processes that you're trying to achieve. For example, if I was a sales manager, I could go into this tool and I want to manage a campaign, and then it provides me with the help topic I need. If I hit the home page and go into process, you could also have Visio diagrams that hotspot off to the relevant business areas, helping people guide themselves through a specific business process. So not just a generic tool, this tool can be customized very heavily for all areas of your business.
That's pretty awesome. I really do like the ability to both customize from a visual perspective and also from, in effect, your content and process. I think means that, again, we're in this SharePoint game for the long haul. So you may well start off with the very basic stuff, but as you mature, absolutely, the Centre of Excellence should be looking to create this content and customise it to give the best experience for the users and the best support for the end users. So who is the SharePoint Centre of Excellence? Who is actually involved in this? Well, I mentioned and go into some detail in the governance book about the Centre of Excellence, but at a high level, I think there's a number of key roles that we need. The first is technical authority. SharePoint still is a very technical product, and we need to understand the impacts of rolling out business functionality on the technical platform. Will it impact performance? Will it impact storage? Will it impact upgrades in the future? All of these things need to be taken into account. So we need somebody that can really take responsibility for the whole SharePoint platform. And in the larger implementations, that may well be multiple people. The other area is SharePoint SMEs. Nowadays, SharePoint, nobody really knows all of SharePoint now. It's become such a large platform. So in a lot of cases, I really recommend my customers have multiple SharePoint SMEs, and this may be based around SharePoint functionality, so maybe the BI side of things, workflow, knowledge management, records management, or it may be around business areas that align with the SharePoint platform. Either way, having SharePoint SMEs that have deep knowledge of the platform, but also deep knowledge of the associated business area is really key to helping drive the business value out of the platform and also engage the users. And then I think we need some, I guess, softer roles within your SharePoint Centre of Excellence. People like change agents. Now that might sound quite a cool term, but change agents are people that can help your Centre of Excellence drive change through the business. As I said earlier, I see SharePoint being more and more of a change management project and an ongoing long-term journey than just a technical project that lasts 6 months and we roll it out and everybody's happy. So having people that understand the complexities of change is really important. And you may want to sort of add to that, or it may even be the same people like community managers. Especially where you have knowledge management or social features being rolled out, having people that are active actually within the solution and helping people get value within the solution day to day is also a really useful role. And then you've got people like your requirements facilitators. And these aren't people that go around with a clipboard or a spreadsheet asking people what they want. These are more people that run facilitative workshops, maybe using game storming and collaborative play and the stuff that I love to do when I'm not talking about change management, but really getting to the grips and understanding the insights to what the business is trying to achieve, and then being able to, in effect, replay them back to the more technical people within the Centre of Excellence to deliver that. And then, of course, on combined knowledge, I'm talking with Chris. Obviously, you have the end user trainers, the people that are really going to be working with the business to make sure they have the knowledge and understanding of the platform to deliver their day-to-day roles. So, Chris, can you tell us more about that training, what you guys offer, and what's important from a Centre of Excellence perspective?
So, Ant quite rightly said there, who is involved and who are the people that you are targeting. So, basically, Combined Knowledge has been teaching SharePoint for 10 years, and within the UK and internationally all around the world. And we schedule public classes that are regularly available, which give you a different choice of courses that you can book onto all year round and train these specific people who are identifying. So we're going to provide the same facilities in your organisation for a timing that suits you. So we could do on-site training within your business around a time frame that best suits you. We can provide generic classes, and we can also customize classes to cover the content that you think your end users need to focus on. Also, our classes have hands-on labs as well. So what we like to accomplish with our training is that people are familiar with the way that the system works. Now, quite often we can provide a SharePoint environment for your users to go on and to learn the essential skills that they need for SharePoint success. However, a lot of businesses that we've worked with say, can you train us on our SharePoint environment? And of course we can do that. We can work with your business to create a location where it's safe for users to play around in your SharePoint environment with your features and your branding, so that they actually learn in their own environment and become more applicable to working in the environment with the customizations that you've made. And also we can provide certification as well, so that when users have completed the training, there's a sense of accomplishment and they've got a certification at the end of the training. And then, of course, going back to Ant's original point, once we've identified the people, what we do is we can allow them to make educated decisions with the essential knowledge they gain from the training. Another option that we have is to provide online training as well. So just like we're presenting with WebEx at the moment, Combined Knowledge presents their training through WebEx as well. And of course we've got various features such as a webcam so that you can view the trainer. We share the desktop so that you can see the trainer's demonstrations just like you would in a classroom. And we also have a super fast bandwidth connection to minimize any lag for global training. So we do global training for any time zone. We do Asia Pacific, US and European time zones. And that means that you can essentially attend the training from any location that has a good network connection. You can use your microphone on your computers and instant chat so that you can talk to the trainer just like you would do in a classroom. And then you also have access to your online environment so that you can RDP onto your own SharePoint environment and go through exercises again just like you would in the classroom. So some people say, do I miss out on anything if we choose the online training option? You don't miss out at all. Some people think it's even more convenient being able to attend from wherever they want to, as long as they've got a good network connection. So again, that's another advantage for the people in your organisation.
Excellent. So that sounds really good. So how do we, as a I guess, a centre of excellence, how do we work with the business? What's that kind of relationship like? I guess the first thing I'd say, the ideal is don't be IT, don't be the SharePoint team. In a lot of cases, although that's kind of I guess maybe the goal that we're aiming for. In a lot of cases, that isn't possible. But we should try not to talk to the business, try not to engage with the business as if we were the IT team. We need to be looking at engaging with them in their own language, talking to them around business issues and how we as a centre of excellence and how SharePoint can help support them and achieve their goals. And I think what is key, and I think this is becoming more and more applicable, is that we should create what I think is almost an evolving story. If we go way back to cave dwellers, they used to draw pictures. Yeah, they used to draw pictures on walls. And people would, like the picture that's on the screen at the moment, could well be about where to go and hunt for your food. And then people would add things to that wall. They would add where the bad creatures are that go and attack you, or where the safe drinking water is. And the picture on the wall, historians have found and archaeologists have found, has evolved over time. People have added their own elements to that story. And I kind of see that as the way we need to be approaching SharePoint. It needs to be this evolving story, but also I think it needs to be quite visual. We need to encourage both the Centre of Excellence and all the members in the Centre of Excellence, but also business users to engage with us, to come to us and say, you know what, we have this real business problem. I think SharePoint might be able to solve it, but I need help. Let's work through this. Let's have some sessions. Let's talk about it and see if you can add some features, switch some things on, do some customization that will solve my business area's problem. So we end up evolving SharePoint. We have this evolving kind of story about what we're trying to deliver and how we can add value to the business. It's back to that adaptive capacity thing that I talked about earlier, which Ronald Heifetz talks about in loads and loads of detail. It's quite a boring book, so maybe not. Maybe just try and find some blog posts about it or something rather than read his book. But it is, I think, a very important concept. So I think we need to be bringing everything that we do around SharePoint, both from a content perspective, but also what our vision is, what our requirements are, prioritizations, and making them visible to the business. So that might mean you have your Kanban board in a small organisation. You have a Kanban board that's up and visible, and people can go, hold on a second, you've got these features prioritised for in 3 months' time. I need them now, and you can start having conversations about priorities. I think all I'm trying to say is that we need to try and get the business involved and engaged in what we're doing with SharePoint, and not have it as just SharePoint and the Centre of Excellence delivering features and hoping the business will use them. Let's get this as a real dynamic two-way kind of thing. And I think, Chris, you found that, I think, with both your work that you're doing with combined knowledge and the training and all of that, that kind of resonates.
Again, from what I'm saying, is this driving force to evolve this story is essentially one of the areas that I've commonly come across is basically trying to get the right people to help evolve the environment to drive that story. And there are a few key people in the business that we should identify that can help us with that development. So developers, we often train, and developers are probably incredibly key to the success of your SharePoint environment. So first of all, it's to help them really by training them, to allow them to be aware of features so that they don't waste time reinventing the wheel and creating functionality that already exists in the system. We help them understand what does exist so that they're not recreating existing functionality. Developers also need an understanding of how end users will collaborate in a SharePoint environment. So they do need, in essence, some end user training just to bring them in line and help them understand the system. A lot of people feel that they can jump into a system as a developer and just start coding, but if they don't understand what the end user experience is like, they can sometimes end up butchering that end user experience and making it less applicable. So we provide developer content for SharePoint 2007, 2010, 2013, which have exams at the end so you can get a qualification by the end of the training. We have the same solution available for administrators. So Ant mentioned earlier, administrators, he mentioned things like storage, and it's the administrators who are basically go into sort of driving that as well, and making sure that the system is prepared. So an IT pro may not have any previous experience with SharePoint, so again they might need a little bit of an end user flavour to the course just to bring them around and help understand how the system's going to work. Again, we facilitate the certification options for SharePoint administrators, and also the advanced infrastructure courses also assist with the full development of a farm as well, so not just the SharePoint environment, the entire farm. And training administrators ensures that SharePoint is correctly set up from the start, which will help the system scale with the business without encountering common issues. Quite often people go, a server will do, okay? And Ant said, you've got to think about the storage, you've got to think about the infrastructure. And it's the IT administrator and the SharePoint administrator's perspective to make sure that back end is correct. A lot of times I work with customers and they say, oh, that's really slow, it takes ages to upload a file. It really goes down to details like the IOPS of writing to a disk, the infrastructure being set up. Should the infrastructure replicate globally if your business is global? It's those kind of key things that you need to address, and getting those administrators to set up the environment correctly, again, is driving your SharePoint environment.
And I guess this highlights really quite nicely the diversity that a SharePoint Centre of Excellence needs. On one hand, we're talking about IOPS, and it's a long time since I was technical, so IOPS is I think I understand what it means, but I wouldn't recognise one in the street. At the other end of the kind of developer and administrator training and support to make sure that your platform is performant and works for the business, we've got people out into the business, people that I call tummelers. Now, tummelers is a strange word, and I think really what it's basically from I think a Yiddish word, and basically what a tummeler is, it was the person at a Jewish wedding who used to get up and dance and have fun and make sure all the attendees at a Jewish wedding are enjoying themselves. Basically coming down to the fact that the bride and the groom want all the attendees at the Jewish wedding to have fun and enjoy themselves, and it was the role of the tummeler to make sure that happened. Now that may seem completely crazy, and please bear with me, but the reality is, in the SharePoint world, we need people that use SharePoint in the way that we as a Centre of Excellence feel is most appropriate. Some people call it best practice. I don't like to use the word best practice, but in effect that's what it is. We're amplifying good behaviour. Now, you can't tell people, or rather you can tell people to work in a certain way, but we're all people and we're likely to ignore that. But tumblers, you'll find, are people that you should identify within your business. They're the people that are always sending links and never sending attachments. They're the people that are always tagging content appropriately. They're people that are working in a way that is going to deliver huge value within SharePoint. So we need to identify them from a Centre of Excellence perspective, and then support them. And the training and stuff that Chris has already talked about is absolutely ideal to be able to help these tumblers learn more about the platform, more about how they can add even more value. I kind of see them as almost a positive virus within your organisation.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to, you need to find them, and then you need to let the virus replicate. I hope that doesn't sound too weird, but you need those people to tell their friends, tell their colleagues about the great functionality, how it's better not to send attachments, how it's better to tag content so you can find it in the future. It's a really key role. But as I say, they can't be made. You've got to identify them and then support them and nurture them. So Chris, have you had similar experience?
I have seen them. I've seen these people in the organisation, and they are very, very good. They are actually the pride and joy of most trainers, to be honest, because there's one thing to have a person sit on a course and take in the knowledge, but another person who thinks, this is great, these are the best practices, I can really work with this. Those people, it's the knock-on effect. They start pushing that good vibe out to other people. So as Ant said, these are people who promote good content in SharePoint, but they don't just sort of nudge someone and say, yeah, this is a good file. No, they go and tag the file with the various keywords that allow it to appear in the search. They use the like functionality. The more they like and rate content, the easier it is to find good content, and these people can promote it. The other thing that they can do is, they show the business that you do not need to be an IT professional to achieve success in SharePoint. This is an end user focused system, and you can get invested in this functionality without having to learn how to develop websites with HTML. It's all that easy. The one thing I was discussing with Ant prior to this start of this webinar was, some people do get slightly confused with, what's a power user and what's a tummeler. Well, technically a power user might have all of that essential knowledge, but they may not use those best practices. I can show someone, hey, if you email a link, you don't have items sitting in your inbox, you don't clog up Exchange with all of these large attachments. They go, yeah, that's great, go back to work and just send attachments again. But, these are the people who, approach this in a different way. They have the knowledge, they like to share their knowledge and help infuse the community with maybe blog posts to help spread that knowledge. And, they contribute to SharePoint discussions and FAQs. So power users have that knowledge and share that knowledge, but it's the tummelers who really cling on to the best practices in SharePoint and make sure that people identify that that is a really good practice to use in the business.
Absolutely, Chris. So it is important that both kind of roles out in the business are essential really for, as we've been talking about, sustained user adoption and really driving that value. But they do have different support needs, they do have different requirements, and they do work differently. And I think once you recognise this, then it's really easy to support those two different kind of types of people within your organisation. So I want to talk a little bit about really what I see as the 4 key reasons why a SharePoint Centre of Excellence actually works. And I've seen this work. I've seen both small and global organisations implement a SharePoint Centre of Excellence and absolutely deliver value from it. Yes, it's a learning experience. Yes, we make mistakes, but absolutely I've seen very clear value be achieved by a SharePoint Centre of Excellences. The first thing is that it's outward facing. Yeah, it's not a bunch of techies in a room that are developing great SharePoint features. It is, you will need those because we do need them, but absolutely it's more about having a team, a set of people that are outward facing and are focused on what the business is trying to achieve. I often say when I do sessions on requirements, it's all well and good delivering great technical features, but are you delivering the right features for your organisation? Having a vision and understanding where you're going and making sure those features support that is key. So being outward facing and understanding the business is really, really important. The second one is the word autonomous. Now, autonomous is really around the SharePoint Centre of Excellence, to some extent, ideally not reporting into IT, not being part of the IT team. My ideal Centre of Excellence, and I'll be honest, I've not seen one like this yet, is one that basically reports to the board, that reports strategically. It may well, and in fact it has to have some dotted lines to IT, but I want SharePoint Centre of Excellence to be autonomous, because that gets rid of the IT or your communications team biasness, and they can purely focus on delivering value. So I think that's really, really key. The next one is, to some extent, a new one for me, and it's a weird word, holacracy. I tend to use a lot of weird words in what I do. I sort of apologise for that. But holacracy basically defines down to being a self-organising and self-governing organisation. So holacracy is actually used a lot in organisational management and organisational theory, and you may well have seen in the news recently one of the online shoe retailers actually moving to be holacratic as a whole organisation, which basically means getting rid of your organisational hierarchies, and it's quite a bold step. But from a SharePoint perspective and from a Centre of Excellence perspective, it means you're self-organising, so you get the roles you need to support the business, and you're self-governing. Again, you're not being governed by IT processes, you're not being governed by what a certain team or department want, you're being governed by what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's key. If you can get a team that, as much as possible is standalone, is driving itself, is recruiting the right people for delivering the kind of solutions it needs to, and is evolving itself, then I think you're on a really great path to SharePoint success. And the last one, again, it's another strange word potentially for a Thursday morning, but serendipity. Serendipity basically is value creation based on unexpected encounters. And if we go way back towards the start of the session, we were talking about emergence, both from a value of SharePoint as a platform and emerging requirements and uses of SharePoint. Serendipity is basically around creating a situation where accidental value can happen. So if you've got an autonomous Centre of Excellence that sits there and can have business conversations, that in the background can be innovating and trying out new things, then you're more likely to have, with all these open communication channels and business engagements, you're more likely to stumble across great new value opportunities. So serendipity is really about having those water cooler conversations around letting people tell you what their problems are and you trying to come up with answers and coming out with some really unexpected but very positive value. Hope that makes sense. I know there's quite a few weird words there, but I think they are the key 4 things that we need to think about when we're setting up a SharePoint Centre of Excellence. Next thing I want to talk about briefly is what are the challenges? None of this is easy, and hand on heart, I know that for a lot of you, you'll be saying, some of this is straightforward, some of this hopefully you've already got implemented, but actually doing the whole of it is quite difficult. Autonomy is one of the key things that I think is really difficult to get rid of. How many organisations are actually going to let you and a bunch of your SharePoint friends basically set up a new department or a new team within the organisation and go and deliver value? I appreciate that's not, in a lot of organisations, that's going to be a tricky one to pull off. If myself or combined knowledge can help in any way to help that happen, then we will. But absolutely, that is tricky. Getting the right people. Bringing the right people into the organisation is also tricky. I saw, as an anecdote, a great example once of in a large organisation, they had a Centre of Excellence, and they were engaging a lot with what I would probably class as a guy that was a combination of a power user and a tumbler. And he ended up going to work for the Centre of Excellence because he really got what SharePoint meant, but he also understood the business. So he ended up being, in effect, recruited by the Centre of Excellence to go and work in that team. And that was a fantastic addition to the team and some great value. So maybe your organisation, you can see it as career progression to go and join the autonomous, holacratic, funkily named SharePoint Centre of Excellence. And that kind of brings me on to the next thing, which is, what the hell do you call it? SharePoint Centre of Excellence is the term that we've been using in this session. But I've also heard it called just the SharePoint team, or even a SharePoint guild. I
like guild. That's good. I like that.
I'm sure there's some online game players out there that like the idea of a SharePoint guild.
Yeah.
The reality is the name doesn't really matter, but we could also sort of start thinking about, should we even be calling it a SharePoint Centre of Excellence or a SharePoint guild? If we're focusing on business change projects, then should SharePoint be part of that name at all?
That's it. An ambiguous name means that you could actually evolve other areas of the business as well, other systems.
Absolutely, and I've seen 1 or 2 organisations starting to evolve this and have, in effect, a Centre of Excellence department that reports into a strategic role, and then having, in effect, almost functional Centre of Excellences. So your intranet Centre of Excellence, your social Centre of Excellence, your records management Centre of Excellence. Now, behind the scenes, these may all be SharePoint, or they may be SAP. and Yammer or
Yeah.
some other thing. So actually, going forwards, maybe you go from a IT team that does SharePoint to a SharePoint Centre of Excellence, but maybe as a stretch target, maybe try and drop that name of SharePoint and be more focused on what the business is trying to achieve.
Yeah, one of the challenges as well that is maintaining the value as well. One of the experiences that I've had is basically not getting stuck in the past with your SharePoint environment. So once you've got the system, does it evolve with the business effectively? And that again is a big challenge. So one of the businesses that I've worked to just set up a request and improvement system. And this was an idea that as part of the Centre of Excellence, users should have a location to request improvements. So businesses that have adopted that methodology have helped developers to keep SharePoint aligned to the business and their requirements. So again, this aids adoption by keeping SharePoint focused on its users, and really this can be as simple as setting up a discussion forum in a SharePoint site where people can go to and submit those ideas.
Absolutely. You don't have to necessarily use complicated tools to do this. It can be relatively simple. It's about keeping that engagement going. And sustaining the change is key, as we've mentioned numerous times within this session. And I think there's a few elements that we need to kind of think about to make sure we once we've got a Centre of Excellence set up, that we do sustain that change. Working in an agile way, thinking about continuous improvement is a key aspect. So if you're developing your SharePoint projects using waterfall methodologies, it's quite difficult to kind of maintain continuous improvement, because you've got 2-3 months, whatever it is, then you deliver stuff. Another 3 months you deliver some more stuff. And I think it's really important to try and get into this mindset of continuous improvement. I also think we should try and stay pure. And what I mean by that is that our focus, our number one rule, our number one goal should be around delivering business value, not delivering cool toys. Now, although a lot of you and those that are more technical in the audience will go, probably groan at me for saying, no more cool toys, but there is a place for cool toys, but that I think should be separate. Having a play pit, which I think Chris mentioned before, having an area where people can play and try new things is absolutely perfect for innovation and trying to drive new stuff. But your main focus as a Centre of Excellence should be on business value. Don't forget innovation, don't stamp it out, but almost segregate it so that you've got a clear understanding of, in effect, I guess, what is that serendipitous sort of value that you're going to maybe ad hoc create, and what's the true focus of what you're trying to achieve. And then there's the obvious things, or obvious I think to ourselves and to Chris, around listening to the business, learning about how they're using your solution, learning what works and what doesn't, and just continually rolling out evolutions of your SharePoint platform. If we're engaging the business, if we're adapting functionality, if we're rolling out new things all the time, the business will expect change. They'll be happy with change, and they're actually more likely to try and be involved in that change and give you their good ideas. Does that resonate with you, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sustaining the momentum. I mean, remember you've got the tools like Support Plus, which are a help system that can be customised for your Centre of Excellence and can evolve with the business as well. And of course, we work with businesses, and the ones that like to meet with combined knowledge, as a SharePoint specialists, can identify changes that they make to their SharePoint environment and incorporate those into future training. We've worked with a company for about 1.5 years now, and their system has evolved tremendously. So they're keeping that momentum going, but they're also adapting to changing to incorporate these new features that they're adding into the system. And then one nice little thing that I like to say is that you can keep people invested in the system as well, like using promotions like maybe Profile of the Week, Blog of the Week. Maybe these tummelers can help find the content of people who are other people in the business who are sort of, using the system, and then you can reward them for that. You can give them like a little incentive just to encourage that community to thrive.
Absolutely, and I think it's not something that we're going to talk about in this session, mainly because we don't have time, and it's probably a whole seminar in itself. But things like gamification, again, I think both gamification from an end user perspective, but also from your internally within your SharePoint team, I think is something that in the next 12-18 months is going to become more and more prevalent. because gamification is around amplifying and maintaining good behaviours. Yeah, incentivizing people to work in a certain way. So again, that is, I think, a key point that you raised there, Chris. And gamification, I think, is a good solution to go hand in hand with things that you've already mentioned to drive this sustained change. So that's a lot of things to think about, I guess. So what do you guys do next? What is the things that are really key for you to do to try and put this into action? I think the first thing that I would definitely say, the real key thing, which to some extent hasn't been mentioned very, very much within this so far, is vision. You need to, as a SharePoint Centre of Excellence, understand two visions. The first being what your business is trying to achieve. Yeah, is it trying to grow? Is it trying to diversify? Is it trying to make more money? What is the business vision? And the secondly is aligned to that, and it really does have to be very clearly aligned to the business vision, is what is your SharePoint vision? What are you trying to achieve? What difference will SharePoint or your intranet or your knowledge management solution or whatever it is you're implementing, what difference will that make to the business? And if you can identify that in terms of the difference it will make, that's tangible to you as a SharePoint Centre of Excellence, but also the business will understand it. They will understand the difference this platform is meant to be making to them and the difference it's meant to be making to the business as a whole. The next thing I think you should do is review your SharePoint team. Do you have those roles we talked about earlier? Can you get them? They may not all be different people. And certainly when you're starting off, I suspect they won't be. But absolutely, try and make sure you get those roles covered. Do you have the capabilities that you need? Do people understand how to facilitate requirements rather than just analysing them? Do people have the communication skills to go out and have these business conversations with the business? They're new things really for a technical team. So make sure that your business has, your SharePoint Centre of Excellence has those capabilities and help support them. Organisational structure. Where do you sit in the organisation? Is there anything you can do about it now or in the future to become more autonomous? As we said earlier, that's a big ask, but start trying to push for that. And it might be that you just build, you stay within the IT department, but you build almost an independent identity for the team. And that might be a great first step. And then you need to start building up the tools and the techniques that you're going to need in the future to support the business. So Support Plus is a great example. Getting the right training. All of these tools help you to support the business users. And then it's a case of starting to change, I guess, the hearts and the minds of senior stakeholders and the exec around SharePoint being this strategic platform that can deliver a huge amount of value, but only if we do it right, only if we approach it in the right way, in the right terms. And Chris, you've got some additional ideas.
Yeah, I mean, coming straight off the back of that, I mean, without training your users, without the knowledge to use the system, sometimes the word SharePoint becomes frustrating and unclear to its intended users. I've heard SharePoint with a bad vibe for a few people who come on my course, and they say, people don't really like the word SharePoint in my business. We have to change that mentality, as Ant has been saying. And, tools are needed to ensure support, and training is essential for establishing the expertise to drive the adoption. Again, avoid a passive launch by marketing SharePoint before its implementation to build that buzz. Are you going live soon? Well, maybe have a launch day. And I've worked with a business that had a photo booth set up to allow people to take profile pictures before they had an hour of the day to fill out their profile in their My Site. Why would you waste an hour of the day doing that? It's not a waste. Everyone in that business updated their My Site profiles. The SharePoint index ran. The very next day, if you do a people search, you're finding people with skills, interests, past projects. It was amazing. It was the most comprehensive global address list for a business I have ever seen.
Awesome.
And other things like, making a bit of a party of the day that your SharePoint environment goes live, having branded mugs, cakes, just to help people be aware that, you're not kicking a SharePoint environment under the radar so that people just get it. It's not just delivering that, it's making people aware that it's going live. So again, getting people to be aware of the system is very important, and for ongoing SharePoint adoption, remember training and support tools are essential.
So it's key that, as Chris said, making sure people are aware of what you're doing. Again, it's this evolving story. So the launch day, absolutely great. If you just rely on a launch day, you'll probably fail. But if the launch day is part of your lunch and learns, your training, your floor walking, all of these other activities, then you create this really rich way of engaging the business and making sure they understand the capabilities of this great platform.
Okay, well, we very much appreciate you sticking around till the end. Now, we've just got a few minutes to take some additional questions. So you'll notice in your WebEx window at the top, there is a chat button. What I'd like you to do is, if you've got a few moments, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask Ant or myself, just pop a quick question into the chat window. You can put it to all participants. That means everyone gets to see your question. And what we'll do is we'll answer any questions as and when they come into the chat window. So again, thank you very much for attending, and we'll just wait for any additional questions to come in, and then we'll wrap up the recording.
So while hopefully some questions are coming in, again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for Combined Knowledge for inviting me on this webinar. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great talking with you, Chris, on this. And both our contact details are at the start of the slide, so if you have any other questions after this webinar, or if you're watching this in the future, hello future, then feel free to reach out to us. A question has come in about the 5 key roles, which I think I said were tech authority, SharePoint SME, change agents, requirements facilitators and trainers. That I think is absolutely the key sort of overall role. There may be other roles, and I think I talk about some others within my governance book. I'm not plugging it, but I just can't remember them off the top of my head. I think if you cover those, you've got basically the technical kind of side of things covered off. You've got the requirements gathering, prioritisation, talking to the business covered off, and you've got the engaging the business and driving adoption covered off. So I think that broadly covers everything. In a lot of cases, I have found that a Centre of Excellence will only do, and this isn't a rule, this is just what some examples I've seen, will only do kind of customisations and pretty much out of the box features, and they may basically hand off any development work and more complex work to either another team within their organisation, or quite often to a third party or to an outsourced organisation. And that's fine as long as you have that capability within your virtual Centre of Excellence, then I don't worry about that. So I hope that answers that question.
I'll take John's question. So John says, what would you recommend in the way of internal marketing? You mentioned mugs, pens, giving a name other than SharePoint, but do you have any specific examples that have worked well? Well, there have been quite a few ways of marketing SharePoint. I mentioned I can't mention the company, but the company that sort of made a big launch day, they had the photo booths and they gave everyone an hour to fill in their profiles. But there are other things as well. I think a good thing to do is identify what SharePoint's going to do that's going to benefit people. And this really does get people excited. So a lot of people have trouble accessing information when they're traveling. So making SharePoint available as an external website that allows people to access information externally is a huge benefit. If people understand that this new system's coming and it's going to bring a lot of benefits, it goes away from people saying, oh, there's a new IT system coming into, oh wow, there's this new system coming that's going to allow me to access my information externally. I can send hyperlinks to colleagues. I've got all this functionality that allows me to quickly search for colleagues in the business and see their interests, skills, instantly access information like contact details. And what you do is by marketing the benefits of the system, the system's marketing is best driven from excitement about the system itself. So maybe sort of, I know it sounds odd, but like spoof emails that go out to the business that say, do you have problems with this, and this in your line of work? Well, then this system is coming soon and it's driven to help you, and it creates a bit of a buzz. So something as simple as an email can get people talking. The next time an email comes out, you can provide more information about the features that this is going to allow people access to. Do you need versioning on your documents? Do you have to keep an audit trail? Well, we've got locations to store your information where you can keep track of all versions and revert back to original versions if you want to. Again, there's a bit of excitement. People know about storing files, but having that functionality again is really good. So simplicity, like emails, can help drive, but you don't have to go to the extent where you have to spend money and buying mugs, branding stuff. That can be, a cost to the business, but it does work. But simplicity, like sort of sending out emails to market and make people aware of it, is very important. Now it's we're trying to get away from that comms idea essentially, but this Centre of Excellence can also help promote that good vibe by communicating to the people and getting them invested way before the system's implemented. Or maybe if the system is implemented, consider maybe just doing daily tips like, did you know in SharePoint you can do this? Did you know you could save directly from Outlook to SharePoint? And those kind of tips get people talking and again can help people invest. So hopefully those are some good tips to help you, John.
And I would add to that as well, one of the things I said about the things that you guys need to do for a Centre of Excellence is listen. One of the most powerful things I've found for getting adoption and for marketing your solution is stories from business users. So go out and actually almost, go out and ask the business users that are using this, and this could be power users, it could be tumblers, ask them what they're using it for, ask them what the value is, and ask them, almost tangibly what that value is. So then people like tumblers will say, I now use the solution to do X, Y, and Z. It saves me 5 days a month in administration. It's awesome. That story is more powerful than any mouse mat or mug.
Yeah.
I mean, those are great tools, but stories in a business voice from a business user, case studies from a department, all of those things, if you can start capturing those, they are like gold dust. They are awesome.
And have you seen Christina's question? So how would you approach people that you would think would be great for a Centre of Excellence, but they say they're busy and don't have the time? I've seen this.
Oh, yes.
The people who think, I've got my job, and to broadcast and send out that bottom information, how much of my time is that going to take up? Well, it doesn't have to take up a lot of time, really, does it?
It doesn't. It can be as simple as a conversation, but I guess if the specific questions about how do you get people involved in the Centre of Excellence, then to some extent there's two ways of looking at it. I often feel that Centre of Excellence should be full-time people, or at least dedicated resources. They may be virtual, they may come in, they may have other roles within the organisation, but when they're doing Centre of Excellence stuff, they're doing Centre of Excellence stuff. If we're talking more about how do you get the business, so the tumblers and the power users and the business involved in Centre of Excellence activities, again, it's around reinforcing this value, around reinforcing the fact that what we're trying to achieve is what the business vision is. So actually saying what you're going to do, you want to invest half a day to do whatever it is, will help us help the organisation achieve its business vision. If a business doesn't achieve its business vision, the business goes under, everybody loses their jobs. I'm being a bit kind of, a bit black and white on that, but the reality is what we're trying to do is keep the business in business, keep ourselves in our jobs, and achieve the organisation's vision. Quite often I think that is enough for people to say, do you know what, if I dedicate half a day a month to help the Centre of Excellence, I'm supporting and facilitating the business achieving its business goals. And that sometimes is enough to justify that, because how's some team leader going to go, sorry, you can't do that activity which helps the business? They're not. So I think that's quite a powerful way of putting it.
Yeah. Bettina Clausen's question, does Combined Knowledge offer training for site owners, non-IT people or SharePoint designer? It's very IT specific, or can it be easily learned by normal business users as well? So we at Combined Knowledge created what we call the end user course. So the idea is that we have a 4-day course for end users which have no experience with SharePoint and definitely no experience with IT. So this is very important. So people who come on that course may not have had any exposure to SharePoint. So this course is split into 2 sections. Collaboration, which is a 2-day course, which shows you how to use the system from the perspective of a user of SharePoint, so collaborative, add, edit and delete content within a site. Then the full 4-day course has an additional 2 days on it called Site Ownership. Again, no IT requirements whatsoever. This provides you with site ownership options like creating sites, securing sites, adding content like lists and libraries, and going into that in some detail. So again, this is a 4-day course for end users, which doesn't require IT knowledge, doesn't require previous SharePoint experience. It can help you learn the system. Now, do we have courses for SharePoint Designer? Of course we do. So if you're interested in SharePoint Designer, Combined Knowledge also offer that course, again from a perspective where you don't need to be an IT professional to assess that. We only recommend users be IT professionals if they're attending the administrator course, because they need understanding of Windows Server, Active Directory and SQL, and that is important. So when it comes to our end user classes, please don't worry, you don't have to be very IT literate.
So that excellent feedback there from someone saying that their treasury accountant attended one of your site owner courses and is now basically rolling out, or is now basically managing the team and piloting a SharePoint 2013 rollout. So that's really, really positive reinforcement, I think, that that kind of site owner is a specific role, in the business, that they have specific responsibilities. I'm working with a client at the moment where they have responsibilities around information governance as well, which is an added sort of complexity, but I think the site owner training that you guys do absolutely really helps drive that adoption.
So yeah, and as John stated, she's had no formal IT training. You don't need that background. SharePoint is not really it's an end user system. You don't have to have IT skills to use it. As long as you've used the website, and most of us have ordered some clothes off a website at some point. Christina's just come back and just asked us what can we present to tummelers, for example, power users like today's presentation, to get those people delivering a buzz and that good feel-good feel about SharePoint. Now, I think we've got on the Combined Knowledge YouTube channel, we've got a fair few videos that were taken from the conferences and webinars that myself, my colleague Rob, Sarah, various other Combined Knowledge trainers have delivered similar webinars. Some about very specific themes like document versus pages, some sort of business analysts, where are we now with SharePoint? We delivered SharePoint to the company, how well is it going? And some of that actually talks about some of the themes that we discussed, like doing launch day promotions and building up that vibe. So there was a webinar that my colleague Rob Pratt delivered with Ben Thompson for Johnson Matthey, and they delivered a webinar at the International the SharePoint Evolves conference in London back in April 2013. So if you go on YouTube and search for Combined Knowledge, eventually you'll scroll down and see our channel, and there's webinars and sessions from the conference that you can watch that hopefully have quite a few of those elements that you want to see.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, it is hard. There is a lot less content out there. Stuff that Combined Knowledge have created is great, and as Chris said, touches on some of what that requirement says. But I think also there is a lack of people out there talking about Centre of Excellence around the SharePoint business value side of things. So I don't think it's too hard to kind of do some searches around maybe SlideShare. .net on the web for slides that talk about this. I've certainly got there's a Soul Sailor channel on there with a lot of my presentations, and none of my presentations are technical. It's been a long time since I was ever technical with SharePoint or any other technology. So there is content out there, but to some extent it's hard because it is quite a lot of what we talk about. A lot of what I talk about is not quite philosophical, but it's certainly quite conceptual. I guess if the content out there doesn't meet your needs, then the only other alternative is really to engage myself directly or Combined Knowledge and get us to come in and try and generate that buzz for you.
Yeah. Just to go back to Bettina, she's just mentioning the connection. The problem with WebEx is that if your connection is experiencing issues, we use a fast pipe, so the connection normally goes out to most people perfectly fine. But if there are any sort of bandwidth bottlenecks, you might have the audio drop out. Very sorry for that. We're recording the webinar, and it will appear on our YouTube channel very shortly. After we finish the webinar, I'll package the video up and host that. And about our channel, so both Ant's channel and our channels as well. I just want to mention that Ed just mentions there's some fundamental things to get across, and he mentions things like flat filing systems, metadata, things like that. Yeah, it's important to get people invested in that. And again, if you check out our channels, if you want people to sort of have a quick fix for learning and becoming invested in something. I did in the SharePoint conference this year, I did a 1-hour seminar on managed metadata. And again, if you want to learn a little bit more about that or get people invested in why it's brilliant, have a look at that video. So yeah, definitely take a look at the Soul Sailor and Combined Knowledge channels for more information, and hopefully you can just watch that at your leisure, really.
Absolutely, and don't forget as well, there's some great communities out there around SharePoint, the SharePoint user groups. I try and do as many of those as I can, and I try and bring, in effect, the voice of the non-techie to those. So I look out for the user groups, look out for the Yammer sessions as well, and the Yammer groups on the net again around SharePoint, because again there's a lot of good value out there. But it's a good community. Combined Knowledge have a wealth of experience. So absolutely make them your first port of call, and feel free to reach out to myself as well. And hopefully you guys will have at least learned enough today to understand the direction you want to go, and hopefully we can all work together and help you guys get there. So yeah.
Perfect. I think the questions have tailed off, so thank you very much. For those of you who have asked about training, if you want to contact us for further information about training, sales@combined-knowledge.com is your port of call for asking about training. And do you want to add anything to that?
I'm running a course or doing some courses. I think there's a course potentially. I don't know whether it's been publicised through Combined Knowledge themselves, and also my own courses around governance. I guess if you need to reach out, my details are at the start, but it's ant@soulsailorconsulting.com. And SharePoint is complex. I can't reiterate. If you've got questions, then please don't be afraid to ask questions. We're not lawyers, we don't charge by the hour. Not many of us do. So feel free, be open about this and get in touch, and we'll try and help as much as we can. And I think that goes for Combined Knowledge and Chris himself and myself and other people within the community. So thank you very much for listening. Some great questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your support at the end there. All of the questions have been fantastic. So we're going to close the webinar there. Thank you very much for attending. Stay tuned on our YouTube channels, take a look at some of our existing content, and you should eventually see this video come up in our channels as well, so that you can take a look at this webinar again recorded in high quality, so you can obviously get the full benefit from it. Okay, thank you very much for attending, and have a very good day.
Cheers.